Hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. Hope you're well. I want to talk about the ENFP again today because guess what? I have a new type analysis of the ENFP to offer based on my own developing approach that I have already sketched in this book on the INFJ type. If you haven't got your copy yet, I really recommend that you do. Less than $10 available on Amazon in all the different countries for less than $10, ebook and paperback version. Essentially, it's the deepest study of the INFJ you'll ever find, but there are lots of insights for other types, and anybody might be interested in understanding the INFJ from the inside. So the Ecstatic Soul is the book to get. Thank you. And in fact, in this book, there's a chapter, more specifically chapter 4, where I explore the SE function in the INFJ, and as probably you are aware, the SE function is inferior in the case of an INFJ, and therefore that makes it quite difficult to analyze the function empirically. But in this book, in chapter 4, which is called The Body Recovered, I sketch the possibility of developing a new paradigm based on Jung, which allows for a more complete understanding of the different functions. And this is precisely this paradigm which I have been developing in a new book it's going to be quite a long theoretical book, and it's not going to come out until late next year at best, maybe the year after. We'll see. I have different projects, but essentially I developed this paradigm and I want to use it on the ENFP type today. So let's see where we go. I had done an application of this paradigm to the INFP. You can also refer back to this video because I'll be using quite a similar method. So the ENFP has a function stack which goes like this: NE, FI, TE, SI. So what can we glean from this? We can glean from this that the ENFP has very conscious and very individuated NE. Indeed, it's a dominant function. So that function is essentially the tool they use to navigate the world. Their adaptation to the world of external affairs is primarily through NE. Their second most differentiated and conscious is FI, then follows TE, then follows SI. What does this tell us? Well, first of all, it tells us that ENFPs are very good at gathering information in the external world and turning it into facts that make sense to them as external representations of what's going on the basis of their perceptual intuition. So if they're placed in any kind of environment, they're going to be able to very dynamically and quickly gather lots of different information and turn them into facts that they understand, okay? But so far, the fact is external to them. It has been processed, in a sense, on the basis of the pure physical reality into a fact, but at the same time, it's not yet something that they can concretely act upon. And so this is where the process of introverted perception comes into play, because it is introverted perception in the case of the ENFP SI that takes the contents of the facts that have been gathered and gives them meanings that relate to the ENFP's particular internal experience at that particular moment. And on the basis of that, they can then follow up with action, which is in the domain of judgment, first through FI, which guarantees that the contents of their perceptions are aligned with their values. And because FI is quite developed, the actions, whenever actions are undertaken, the alignment with the values will usually be guaranteed. This is what I referred to in my last video on ENFPs as the value rationality of the ENFP type. ENFPs are value rational. So they're rational from this perspective. Now, once this first value judgment has been established and confirmed, follows the extroverted judgment. In the case of the ENFP, that's the TE, is the last link in the chain before a possibility of actually acting. Here, the ENFP determines how what they have judged on the basis of their internal values can be made to fit in with the external world in such a way as to allow the possibility of an actual action and engagement in the world. So the ENFP is very intuitive, very adaptable when it comes to turning all the information and all the physical stuff and objects that surrounds them into facts of their perception. And they're very good at linking up these perceptions, these percepts. If you consider that the percept is like the isolating and the crystallizing of a perception, a percept. They have a lot of percepts, and they're able to turn these percepts, or rather to ensure that those percepts are then checked for alignment with their value judgments. So they have a very strong intuitive gathering function and a very strong deliberative judging function, introverted judging, whose role is to always assign a specific value they possess to the judgment of the fact that they gathered in the first place. And to be honest, because tertiary TE in the case of ENFPs, and that's not very well known necessarily, can be quite developed just as well as, the INTP's SI can be quite developed, and the INFJ's TI can be quite developed. Well, and the ENFP's TE can be developed. I always find it curious that people are very quick to say, yes, INFJs can have strong TI, and also, yes, INTPs can have strong SI, and INTJs can have strong FI, and so on and so forth. But it's not as often that you hear, yes, ENFPs can have strong TE, but it just follows. It's a logical entailment of the two previous premises. And so ENFPs having good TI are usually able to turn the judgments that are so far introverted in terms of values to make them align with the order of the external world so that they can actually act in the world. And so ENFPs, even though they're idealistic types in a sense, they're often able to impact the world, as we see in the well-known historical ENFP figures or political ENFP figures, figures that are ENFP and are influential on the way the world is going. This is linked to their ability to use TE to action their judgments. And in turn, those judgments are based on the very, very developed capacity to gather facts from the external reality. So what is the ENFP's main blind spot then? What is the main weakness? We saw it in the case of the INFJ as this kind of alienation that comes from the unconscious nature of their SE function. In the INFJ, the gathering of information is performed, of course, because everybody has to gather information, but is mostly unconscious, and therefore INFJs come to insights that I don't really understand where they came from, and that can leave them feeling alienated, and they can also make it hard for INFJs to explain where the insights came from, which also contributes to giving them a prophetic and foreseeing quality. Well, in the case of ENFP, the issue is not the same, because in this case, extroverted perception in the form of NE is very developed, it's very conscious. So in a way, the ENFP is the exact opposite of the INFJ in this respect. But here, the function that's most unconscious, that's least differentiated, and that is therefore the most likely to be unreliable and leave the ENFP feeling a kind of alienation, although it's certainly not the same kind of alienation as the INFJ alienation or INTJ alienation, is SI. Introverted sensing is a very important function in the ENFP cognitive stack, just as any inferior function is fundamental in any type's cognitive stack. It's important because it is part of the causal mechanism whereby perceiving something, first through extrovert perception, gathering the fact from external reality, leads eventually to an action on the basis of an external judgment, an extroverted judgment. In the middle, you have introverted perception, which processes the gathered fact, and then introverted judgment, which assigns the value to the fact in the case of an FI user. Now, the problem with the ENFP is SI, quite unconscious, not very differentiated. What is this going to mean? Well, this is going to mean that although NE is very developed, and although FI is very developed, so the capacity to gather facts from external reality is very active, and the capacity to align the facts that are gathered to values is also very developed, there's going to be a disconnect, quite frequently a disconnect between this ability to gather facts and the assigning of value to the facts in judgments. And the disconnect is simply coming from the fact that in the middle you have an introvert perception. Introverted perception, you have to understand, is kind of a function that prepares the externally gathered fact for the introverted judgments. But in order for the external fact to be prepared for the introverted judgments, it first has to be internalized as something that fits with the reality, the subjective reality of the user, in this case the ENFP. And this is what it means by an introverted function. SI is an introverted function of perception. It links up directly with the introverted function of judgment, in this case FI. But in order for SI to do its job, well, the more conscious it is, the better, because otherwise what's going to happen is that the ENFP is going to be experiencing trouble subjectivizing those external facts that they gather. And because they have trouble subjectivizing those facts, they have trouble connecting the facts to the functions of judgment, value, rationality, and then external judgment. But because they have difficulty connecting the two, what is going to happen is that the ENFP and the ENTP experiences similar issues, although I'd have to make a video on ENTPs to explain the differences. The ENFP is going to experience difficulties once they have gathered the facts, all the information. That's something they do very naturally. It's going to be hard for them to discriminate between those facts that are relevant to their subjective condition, which then will be candidates for introverted judgment, the value rationality of FI, and those facts that are not, the facts that are random, the facts that aren't relevant. It's not an alienation from the gathering of facts from external reality. It's a kind of alienation from the ability to discriminate between which of those external facts matter subjectively and which do not. And which means that the ENFP's main challenge is going to be this slightly over-vast expanse of external facts, in the face of which the ENFP doesn't really know how it happens that they then select some of them for FI judgments and others are not. The process is unconscious, which means that they don't have complete control over it. And so the main existential challenge that they will face is that of feeling as if reality is too full and that they cannot completely apply the rationality of their values to that fullness of reality. Let me know in the comments what you think, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Consider dropping a comment, give me a like and subscribing, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.